So the talk I'm going to give you is a bit of a bookend to a talk I gave at UK North in 2012, which was introducing a new protocol to replace Whois, and here we are 12 years later, finally getting to the point where we might actually see the end of Whois. So if we can just have a quick overview of what we're going to be I want to talk about today. Firstly, is to give you an idea of what's likely to happen in the next sort of few months, because this is something that's likely to impact network engineers all over the world, because this is going to be part of the furniture that you've been relying on right since the very beginning, and is going to go away. So this is where we are now. ICANN, the organisation which coordinates the operation of the root zone and the management of generic TLDs like .com and .net and all of the others, we've been going through a process of deprecating Whois, and it goes all the way back to about 2012. But last year in April, the board of ICANN approved amendments to the contracts that registries and registrars are subject to, that introduced a process for retiring Whois. So you can see the green line points to where we are now. We've actually moved on a little bit since I did these slides. So we're heading towards the sunset date. The most recent important and notable event was the end of the RDAP ramp-up period, which was February this year. So that was the date by which all registries and registrars were contractually obligated to provide an RDAP service in conformance with all of the specifications, and also had to meet service level agreements. So that should be the case now for every gTLD domain under management for both registry and registrar. But the next date that comes up is the beginning of next year, 28th of January next year, and that's when contracted parties, registries and registrars, will no longer be obliged to operate a Port-43 service. So it becomes optional for them to operate it after that date. What does that mean? Well, I mean, Whois has been around since the 1980s. As I say, it's part of the furniture. We're all used to it being there. And for whether you're a network engineer or a security researcher or law enforcement or a lawyer, I mean, there's a very broad range of people who are interested in the content of Whois records. They've been able to just reach for Whois and get their information with only small kind of wrinkles because of things like GDPR coming along and changing it, the content of those records, but it's been there, and that service has been there since the 1980s. So it's probably one of the most deeply embedded protocols that is, and it's going to be in shell scripts and God knows what, dating back to, the very early days of everything, and it may well go away. So if you have anything that relies on Whois or might rely on Whois, it's probably worth doing an audit of all of those shell scripts and Perl scripts and whatever, looking for things that are using Whois, because you can't rely on them working after January. But you do still have 6 months at least, so the time is not completely lost on you. I want to just briefly describe what Whois is being replaced with. So RDAP is the Registration Data Access Protocol. It was standardized by the IETF, and it's been around for a few years now. You can see here that the RFCs that you will need to refer to find out how it works. It is used by both name and number registries, so the RARs all offer an RDAP service as well, and they already handle a significant amount of traffic over their RDAP service. It's based on REST, so it's an HTTPS service. Every registry operates a web server that handles these queries, and you get data back in the form of JSON. There is a standardized structure for responses. That was one of the key objectives of RDAP, was to make these records machine readable, because before they were plain text. It was intended to be completely opaque. We kind of retrofitted on a sort of key value structure to it, but it wasn't very good. There was no negotiation, there was no encoding or anything like that. So JSON solves a lot of those problems for us. And it also has a discoverability mechanism, which is that if you don't know which RDAP server to go to get a record, you can consult a registry that's published by ANA, and that tells you for every single TLD that has an RDAP service which server to go to get that record. And there's a reasonable ecosystem of tooling out there as well. So if you're wanting to consume RDAP, whether that's on a command line, on a web interface, in a script that you're writing, there are libraries and clients of all kinds that you can make use of. Just a brief timeline of the development, as I say, Whois, which was the working group that did this work, dates back to 2011. It finished in 2015. The RARs began deploying not long afterwards, and the first CCTLDs, which I think were .AR and .CZ, deployed in 2017. And we've started the process of deploying RDAP in the gTLD space since 2019. And as I say, you've got all these different systems that you can be using. ICANN operates something called lookup.icann.org, which is a kind of one-stop shop. You can go there, and if an RDAP record is available, it will give you that RDAP record. Because of the way that REST works, that RDAP query doesn't have to come through us. So we're not acting as a man in the middle. Your browser goes to the RDAP server directly, gets the response, and it gets rendered in your page. But if an RDAP service isn't available, then we'll try Whois. And because it's JSON and because it's HTTPS, it's very, very amenable to kind of shell scripting. So curl and JQ are your friends. Here are a list of some of the clients. You can see there are libraries for JavaScript, for PHP, for Perl, Ruby, Rust, Go, TypeScript, whatever you fancy. So they're for your programming language of choice. ICANN does maintain a command line client. You can get it from here. It's written in Rust, so it's very portable. You can download an executable binary and install it on any machine you want to. I won't pretend that I think it's the most beautiful display tool, but it does give you access to the information that you need. Being RDAP, it is nicely structured, so things are kind of there's indentation and formatting and display, so that it's at least a bit more sensible than just getting that straight list of keys and values that you used to get with Whois. There are some pitfalls with RDAP, and I think it's worth at least recognizing that those pitfalls exist. The first thing is that while there's good coverage in the number space and there's good coverage in the gTLD space, CCTLDs are a little slow to adopt new technologies. Nominet is a good example of a good player that they've deployed RDAP for .uk, so you can rely on .uk domains being accessible via RDAP. But there are many other CCTLDs that haven't. It's one of my personal missions is to go and try and get more CCTLDs to turn on RDAP. Some of them have deployed the server, but they haven't added themselves to the Bootstrap registry, which is something that I'm trying to persuade them to do. We also see often problems with the JSON structure. So RDAP records have things like nested arrays of arrays and that sort of thing, and that can trip people up who are writing RDAP servers. ICANN maintains a conformance tool, and it should be possible for anyone who wants to run an RDAP server or anyone who's got a problem with an RDAP server to use that conformance tool to find out what's going wrong and then hopefully try and fix it. Registries and registrars sometimes use web application firewalls and CDNs and things. They put their RDAP services behind them, and that sometimes means that they are quite aggressive in their rate limiting. If you're something that doesn't look like a web browser, sometimes they will block you. I know this is a common issue with things like Cloudflare and Perl, for example. If you're trying to get anything else from behind a Cloudflare CDN using Perl, the default user agent, Cloudflare just blocks it automatically. You can't do anything about it. You have to lie and say you're something else. If you have problems with RDAP servers, here's how you fix the problems. The first instance is just try dropping an email to the registry and registrar that's affected. It should be that if you get something back from the RDAP server, there'll be an email address somewhere in there. So there'll be an administrative email or a technical contact or even an abuse contact somewhere in that in that response. Just drop them an email, tell them that you found a problem, and you might find that they fix it. If you don't, come to ICANN. Our job is to make sure that they comply with the contracts. The contracts say they have to comply with the RFCs. So we are more than happy to receive reports from the community that say that registries and registrars are not complying with those specifications. There is a mailing list. In fact, there are 2 different mailing lists that are worth sharing here. There's a general discussion mailing list that ICANN operates called gTLD Tech. Any issues you have with gTLD technology, so that's RDAP, DNS, DNSSEC, the centralized zone data service is another popular topic for discussion on that mailing list. You go to that mailing list. Anyone can join. You don't have to be a registry or a registrar or ICANN or anyone. Just go into that mailing list and say, hey, I've got a problem. Can someone help me? And people from all those different organizations will be listening. And then the IETF, which is where the maintenance of the RDAP protocols is done. The regex working group is working on extensions to RDAP to improve its functionality, to add new capabilities, and again, people can report issues. There's often discussions about interoperability issues. If people are writing an RDAP client and their RDAP client doesn't work with an RDAP server, that's an interoperability issue. That's the sort of thing that regex is interested in. So, just a few seconds for anyone who has any questions.
Thank you, Gavin.
I see Ben.
Hi, Ben from BGP Tools. I guess a wider question on Whois, for domain names at least. Is there really any useful information left in Whois post-GDPR? I mean, most people had already put themselves behind domain privacy, mail forwarder type systems anyway. But since GDPR, there's like really no useful information, especially in the gTLDs, who basically just say, sorry, I can't deliver anything, GDPR. I think it's .es just says go and do it on a web form instead.
Yeah.
Did Port-43 actually have any use left, at least in the domain name space?
So certainly, if you look at the traffic, the query volume, so all the registries are required to report their query volumes to us. And we didn't see a significant drop-off in query volume. So there are as many people doing queries as there were before. But
are those people, or are those vast?
And ultimately, there's a person
scripts
behind it. Someone's pushing the button if it's then doing 1 million Whois queries. So there are uses for that information, if you're a network engineer, often you're more interested in just seeing what does the database say about this domain name in terms of what should be in the DNS or what the expiry date is or who the registrar is, and that's only information you can get from either Whois or RDAP. So in terms of who owns a domain name or who's associated with a domain name, yes, that's not available, but that's not the only use for this data.
Yeah, thinking about it actually, the two things left I use Whois for domains is what's the current state? Is it on hold or whatever, or and when does it expire? Because I would like to purchase it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.